Costa Rica, 3 a.m. in the morning. Trying to get presentations done. Lots of fun. So I've been doing a bit of light thinking about oppression and kind of the impacts of oppression. It's a very interesting space that we're living in today, where we're very cognizant of oppression and its impacts on other people. But one thing we're kind of terrible at gauging is our complicity in oppression. And it's not a new phenomenon. This is basically how Hitler was able to rise to power, how um, the US is able to put in place a guy like Donald Trump, or to potentially put in place a guy like Donald Trump as a president. It's what allowed apartheid to happen. It's probably what perpetuates some of the issues in the Middle East, etc., etc., etc. So, generally, what you find with oppression is that it is very simple to condone oppression as long as you are not a victim of it. It's very simple to minimize the suffering of others and exaggerate your own suffering. So, particularly for me as a black man, I tend to be very sensitive to black issues, particularly the racism that happens in America, white supremacy around the world, the plight of Africans around the world being probably one of the most oppressed group of people historically and to date. But I tend to then minimize the suffering of women who make less money than men, who are more vulnerable than men in many situations, etc., etc. And exactly the same thing with the LGBTQ or I community, which is an interesting phenomenon because I have conversations with people in the community, and what you find is that within the community there's also senses of oppression. So gays and lesbians having potentially the most amount of awareness tend to separate themselves from transsexuals, etc., etc. And then within that community, they then would also judge why is this type of gay person with this type of gay person. This is not, a buff gay should be with a feminine gay, and same thing with lesbians. And you tend to kind of have this situation where if the suffering isn't your own, it's minimized. When it's your own, it's exaggerated. Um, and the only way to really kind of outdo this is to find ways to interact with people who don't look and act like you, not your color, not your religion, not your sexual orientation, etc., etc. Because what it does is it breaks down the walls of othering. So you stop looking at people who are not like you as other than you. So you stop looking at women as separate from men, or black people as separate from white people, and people of other ethnicities, etc., etc. So one of the most important things to do is to integrate, to do as much as you can to integrate into other people's cultures, particularly people who are a minority from you. So, and when I say minority, I speak from a historical privilege perspective. So if you're a man, interact with women or gay people, etc., etc. If you're white, interact with people of minority ethnicities, etc., etc. If you are a certain nation within a country, interact with foreign people, um, as much as you can, and particularly what you should look out for is the vulnerable in your society or your community or your country, and that's where you should start applying your time. That's one way of breaking down the walls of othering, so that the suffering of others is not disconnected from your own suffering, and then you do less to perpetuate your own struggles. The other thing to do that I found that's helpful is, particularly if you're in a majority or a privileged situation. So either you're a white person, you are a male person, you are a rich person, you're an able-bodied person, you're a heterosexual person, whatever your dominant state is, think of yourself in an oppressed state. So as an example, when I look at how I interact with women, I try and feel how do white people interact with me as a black person, right? So if there's a sense of fear, if there's a sense of dislike, or etc., etc., I try and apply those standards to myself interacting with women. So if I am condescending towards a woman for any reason, I try and think about if somebody was condescending to me because of my skin color, how would I feel? And the same thing, I apply the same kind of logic with homosexual people, with anybody who's different from me. I try and think of myself as if I was in that situation where I was victimized. How would I feel if I was being victimized for the color of my skin or for any other reason? How would that make me feel? And that kind of allows me to temper my own opinion of the situation. So then I'm able to go, wait, if somebody was condescending to me because I was a black person, I would get very upset about that. Therefore, I shouldn't be condescending to someone because they're a woman or because they're heterosexual, because they're a different religion, because of anything. So when you're in a position of power, this is how you should think of anybody talking to you from. I mean, if you're in a position of power, talking or interacting with someone who is in a position of minority, think about if you were in the position of minority and if somebody was talking from a position of power down to you, would you appreciate the tone? Would you appreciate the type of communication and the interaction, or would you be offended? And if you would be offended, then you're being offensive. And it's just a gauge that I try and use to help me to interact with people of different backgrounds, and try and break down those gates. The third thing is, I think I'm consciously aware that I am a bigot, right? And I don't think this is a unique position. I think we all are. And I notice this because at any point, if I'm sitting in a group of people who are like me, it is very easy to talk about people who are different from us in a condescending manner, you know. So you'll be sitting around a bunch of other black males and you'll say, oh, these women be tripping, man. Or you'll be saying, oh man, these gay people, man, I like them, but from a distance. I don't want them near me, you know. And white people are crazy, dog. And so in that situation, because of that comfort with having bigoted opinions, I'm able to ask, hey, I am a bigot. And I think it's something most people need to realize, is to say, well, you do have some level of bigotry or some level of othering, some level of discomfort around people who are different than you, and it can be very different things. I mean, you can even have a sense of bigotry towards disabled people, you know, looking at them in a certain way, or even poor people who come from a lower social standing than yourself. And then this allows you to kind of take a condescending opinion or a disgusted opinion, or to say, I don't want these people near me. And it's important to realize that, because if you before you can change behavior, the most important thing is to acknowledge it, to be able to say, I know that I'm this type of person, and as a result then I choose to alter or investigate that type of behavior. And that's just kind of my opinion on oppression. I think the first thing, acknowledge it, acknowledge that you are in some cases, you know, in a position of power and potentially are bigoted, or potentially you other others. The second way is to think of it yourself in positions of power, and how you want to be treated, and use that to treat people, especially people who are different from you. And then thirdly, interact, you know, go out, go learn what Muslim culture is about, go learn what homosexual, or not even homosexual, the LGBTQ or I community is about, go learn what being a foreigner in your country is like, and travel, learn to be a minority in somebody else's country, or a foreigner in somebody else's country. Which is something I appreciate about being in Costa Rica. I don't speak much Spanish, and I'm in a very predominantly Spanish-speaking country, and it humbles me because I need help. Everywhere I go, I need help. And it frames me or teaches me to understand that when I go back to South Africa, there are people who need help, and it's my job to help them, not to kind of condescend or look down on them, because I've appreciated how wonderful the people in this beautiful country are. And that's just my 2 cents for today. Cheers.